The stories that made news and made history. The places that matter to us. And the people who make Central Illinois home. Join us from the Vault.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt Metcalf. Thanks for joining us. Do you remember the shows Dialing for Dollars, The Hop, or Sheriff Sid? Back in the day, WCIA produced some great local programming. And in 1978, in honor of the station's 25th anniversary, the station brought the old gang back together to reminisce and celebrate the legacy of broadcasting here in Central Illinois. Take a look.
Les Paul and Mary Ford doing a song called Vaya con Dios. The time is 9:59 in the Twin Cities. In the news tonight, it's official. Central Illinois is getting television. Channel 3 will begin broadcasting sometime late this fall. Groundbreaking.
WCIA presents the Silver Anniversary Special, a look at our first 25 years of broadcasting.
Straight ahead.
From the Vault, celebrating the rich heritage of Central Illinois. Sponsored by Sunset Funeral Homes. Remember, celebrate, heal.
Television in the early 50s was in its fledgling state. In the Central Illinois area, it was virtually impossible for homes to receive a good television picture. At best, they got a snowy image from St. Louis or Chicago. Through the efforts of the News Gazette, the Decatur Herald Review, and August C. Myers Sr., a VHF allocation was given to the Central Illinois area. This meant a strong signal to an area which had been a virtual television void for many years. On Saturday, November 14th, 1953, at 10:45 a.m., WCIA-TV signed on to Channel 3 for the first time. One of the station's first employees was an engineer for the Illinois Water Survey.
It's Indian summertime, and lots of people would go out and lie in the grass and look up at the antenna, and of course these two fellows were putting it up, you know, section by section. They were a couple of careful madmen, you might say. They were always drunk, and Mr. Meyer was always wanting to know what the wind was going to be at the top of the tower at certain times of day when he knew they'd be up there. And it was my job to estimate the wind, and if the wind was going to pick up in the afternoon, I was to call them in the morning. And they lived at a roadhouse out on Route 45. In fact, they must have lived very close to the bar, because I would call the bar number there, and one or the other would always answer. And I remember them the Saturday morning that the antenna was to be hoisted up. The weather had been very bad, and of course you daren't hoist that up, because if it crashes against the tower, you put it out of whack. Well, I had told Mr. Meyer that if they got out there at 7 o'clock in the morning, that they would have less than 20-mile-an-hour winds at the 1,000-foot level before 10 o'clock. And I remember he's calling me at 8 o'clock, and he said, "Jack, where are those men? They're not out here." So I called the bar, and one of them cheerfully answered, and they got out there at 9:30 that morning. But they worked very fast, and they got the antenna up, and we went on the air.
Well, that was 1953. The station was brand new. I got there in time to get on the air the first day, of course, and to do a little bit of preparation for it. It was a fascinating time period. You know, we were located in an old garage, concrete slab floors. Sometimes I think when folks came to visit the studios themselves, and they would see these things in person, they'd be a little bit disappointed, perhaps, that it wasn't more lavish than it was. But it was a wonderful, wonderful land of fantasy in which we lived. And departing from that aspect and turning to the people, I would say it was a marvelous period.
It is, of course, important that you understand the specific needs of elderly people under your care. Love is necessary, but it is not enough in itself. In many cases, the expert care of trained...
Happy Home began in December of 1953. About the middle of December, I think that was about a month after the station went on the air. I really was nervous, and I was worried about getting all my commercials in and the work done, and what if the cake flopped, what would I do then, or if something went wrong, how would I fill in, that sort of thing. So it really was nerve-wracking to do. Well, there's a lot of kibitzing around, because you see, we did all of these things. All of these shows were done from one studio. I thrived on it. I don't know that I could do it anymore because of the pressure of being on television day after day. But it was great fun at the time.
It was kind of decided that they needed the host for an afternoon children's program, and that, why don't we call you Sheriff Sid? I said, let's try that. So about 3 weeks later, I went on the air, kind of pseudo-cowboy, I guess you'd say. Tinker Time, which you may have heard of, ran about 4 years, early in the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock, was that kind of, they talk about instructive programs being needed now. We did that long before anybody ever thought about it, I think. We're purely educational. Station didn't make a dime on that show. A lot of, the thing that I have with children, and I respect this highly, you can't talk down to them. You have to treat them as adults. Talk a language they understand, give them the opportunity. And we really didn't have a lot of a problem with 25 children every day. And it was just a kind of a magic that happened. And they had a respect for their Captain Eddie, for their Ruffles the Clown, for their Sheriff Sid, for Deputy John, you know. And I think if you've earned that, then you can manage them. People used to say to me, call me up on the phone and write me letters, "You're my babysitter every afternoon." Or the parents would say, "You're babysitting for my children." I have fought that in recent years from a management standpoint of declaring, and now the networks have also come out and declared that, look, television is not a babysitter for children. That's a responsibility of the home. And that set in the home is the responsibility of the parents, what they're going to watch. You know, and if you don't think they should watch it, turn it on.
Up next.
From the Vault, celebrating the stories and people you remember from Central Illinois. Sponsored by Loman Ray Insurance Group, specialized home, auto, and farm insurance for Central Illinois.
This is not a real theater. In reality, stands about 2.5 feet tall. Built by me, it is a miniature set used in production. We try to make it as authentic as possible. In the morning at 7:30 each day on 2 stations, I do a show called Tinker Time. In fact, Tinker Time is now in its 5th year of production daily, Monday through Friday. We draw pictures for the youngsters. They draw along with us. We learn about interesting things. We have some films such as Davy and Goliath from the National Council of the Churches of Christ. We draw sketches to music. We have all sorts of projects the youngsters can work on with us.
In those days, I went under the name Scotty. That was the thing. There was a real cast of puppets. I think there was a Beatnik. You know, that was popular at the time. But I can't remember his name, that character. Commodore Spintop's hat turned around. Calvin Caterpillar worked like that. And I sat out in front. I was the Fran Allison of the group. You know, that was the role.
Well, Commodore, first of all, let's find out what this is right here.
What do you suppose that is?
That's an ancient Chinese artifact.
Did you find that down in your museum?
Yes, I did.
You know,
From the
Commodore
museum.
Spintop. Excuse me, Commodore. You know, Commodore Spintop runs a museum right down here.
Yeah, right here.
And he finds all kinds of interesting things there, like this, a Chinese artifact.
Yeah.
That's right. It's actually, it's a 12th Dynasty Chinese carrot cutter.
You
A
don't say.
12th Dynasty Chinese carrot cutter.
Looks dangerous.
That's a very interesting
It
thing.
is.
How do
And John Coleman came up with the idea of a program called The Hop. It was fashioned after Dick Clark's program, after his teenage dance program. But John was the MC of the Hop for a couple of 3 years.
Oh, I jumped up and down and clapped with the music and interviewed the kids. We had spotlight dances and ladies' choice dances. I had a big problem, and that was getting the kids to come to the show. Now, Central Illinois kids were almost all as square as I was at that time in most of the communities, and really didn't want to go dance on television, hardly danced with each other, you know, as high school kids. In the larger communities of Decatur and Champaign, yeah, they danced quite a bit, but they were far too cool to go do it on television.
And here we are, right here at the Hop.
When John left, I became the talent, so to speak, on the Hop.
Who did you have on the Hop as far as talent? What type of people?
Well, let's see. We had we had Johnny Tillotson, who was a fine country and western singer. We had a gal named Dee Dee Sharp, who at that time was a fine pre-rock singer, so to speak. We had George Hamilton, the fourth, I believe it was, and we had Bobby Vinton.
Oh yes, I'm a great pretender, adrift in a world of my own. Watch it, that's better. I'll play the game, and you'd better play too, or we're getting a new piano man. That's all right with me.
Coming up, it's all aboard as WCIA documents more to the story.
The stories and people you remember from Central Illinois. Once again, From the Vault with Matt Metcalf.
Thanks for staying with us from the vault. We're looking back at WCIA's 25th anniversary back in 1978 and reminiscing about some of the shows and personalities we remember most.
Documentaries have been a source of great pride at Channel 3. Over the years, we've acquired a number of state, local, and regional awards. Among these, the Columbia University DuPont Citation and the Robert F. Kennedy Humanitarian Award. WCIA's documentary department was established with the initiation of the program CIA Reports. Later, Soul Side, On the Move, What Do You Say, and Call About were added, forming the 30-minute series. Through these programs, we've gone on the last run of the Cannonball Express.
Flowing mountains to the south bells by the shore. She's mighty tall and handsome and known quite well by all. She's the combination on the Wabash Cannonball.
We floated down the beautiful and peaceful Illinois River.
In our modern, crowded civilization, rivers are somehow apart. The writer Paul Brooks said, "Every river is a world of its own. You unique in pattern and personality.
The spring of 1970 was marked by major disturbances at many universities in Illinois. At Urbana, for 6 days in early March, crowds of students held rallies by day and walked the streets by night, breaking windows, blocking traffic, and causing champagne...
And watched the anger of college students during the crisis of spring in 1970.
It began early on a Sunday morning. A freight train derailed, spilling tank cars of propane gas in the heart of Crescent City, Illinois. Then came the explosion, sending liquid flame hundreds of feet in all directions.
In the wake of destruction, we saw a town pull together to rebuild itself.
Spoon River, I really was, that was something that I really enjoyed doing. I suppose it's rough as a cob. If I look at it again, it probably is pretty rough, but you know, we had members of the symphony from the University of Illinois did the score. Jerry Hiller composed it. We had actors and actresses from the University of Illinois who came over and voiced that. And you have to understand that Spoon River Anthology was done probably 2 or 3 years before there was a Broadway play called Spoon River Anthology. Now, that was before. And because Edgar Lee Masters' poetry was about that area, it seemed natural. And that...
It's on Aaron Hatfield's farm when the frosts begin. For many times with the laughing girls and boys played I along the road and over the hills when the sun was low and the air was cool, stopping to club the walnut tree standing leafless against a flaming west. Now, the smell of the autumn smoke and the dropping acorns and the echoes about the vales bring dreams of life. They hover over me. They question me. Where are those laughing comrades? How many are with me? How many in the orchards along the way to Seavers and in the woods that overlook the quiet water?
Next, a close encounter.
The little one-lane rural two-rut roads between the cornfields out around Philo were jammed till after midnight.
And of course, when the station started up, I thought it would be fun just to get back into it for a while, to see, all weathermen consider themselves real hot forecasters, you know, and I was interested to see whether I could regain my old talents, and I never intended anything more than just, a couple of weeks until the station had hired a professional to do it. But I stayed with it, and here it is 25 years later.
And I think the main thing I should do, given this opportunity to appear again on the station, is to apologize to all the Channel 3 viewers. Gosh, I was bad, and I thought I was good, and I must have been intolerable to watch.
Of course, it was a little chilly yet today, too, I'll confess that. But I think that this evening, that I can smile a bit and promise you we're going to have a nice Easter. Hope that'd make you happy. Well, let's take a look at the national weather map now and see how things stack up across the country today. Here are the fronts as they appeared. A warm front extended from a low-pressure area in Pennsylvania on out to the Atlantic Ocean. This warm front had some precipitation, which brought rain today to the New York City and Pennsylvania area and on up into lower New England. At the same time, a cold front extended further south across the Atlantic states and across to Texas. Along this cold front today, there were some showers. At the same time, as these arrows indicate here, colder air moved down from Canada across the middle of America and down through our area, bringing us chillier temperatures today.
Over the years, like any organization, we've built up a few tales of times past. Sometimes we lose sight of the facts or just remember things differently. Once a young weatherman made a suggestion to his audience on how they might spend a pleasant summer's eve. The results were quite extraordinary.
I was about to go on with the early evening weather when I got a call from a man who said, John, this is the desk over at the police department, and I know you're about to go on. I thought you'd like to know that we're getting a flood of UFO reports from down around Philo, southeast of Urbana. I said, hey, thanks for calling.
One night he was standing, I remember he was standing in the newsroom, and he heard a police radio say that a flying saucer had landed in a field out near, I think, Longview.
Yes, he said, well, it's been a quiet night everywhere. Of course, that's the flying saucer landing at Sodorus created a little activity there.
It's a beautiful summer evening. So I went on the air and I said, what are you going to do with a beautiful summer evening? Why don't you go out and look at the spaceships? I've just had a report from the police that UFOs have been spotted out around Philo.
And as I remember this, he went on the air and he said at 6:15 in the evening, now take this with a grain of salt. You can't believe everything you hear, but I've just heard that a flying saucer landed in a cornfield out in Longview.
It was at a time when everyone was seeing flying saucers, so everybody took off.
Thousands of people got in their cars and went out to see the UFOs, and the roads, the little one-lane rural two-rut roads between the cornfields out around Philo were jammed till after midnight.
We hope you've enjoyed this special presentation from the vault. I'm Matt Metcalf. Thanks for watching.